The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Alex finished mopping the last hallway on the 32nd floor. His back ached from 8 hours of cleaning offices, emptying trash cans, and scrubbing bathroom floors. At 28 years old, he had been working the night shift at Sterling Corporate Tower for almost 3 years now. The pay wasn't much, but it was steady work, and he needed every dollar he could get. Alex pushed his cleaning cart toward the elevator, ready to call it a night. The building was eerily quiet at this hour. Most people had gone home hours ago, leaving behind empty offices with cold coffee cups and scattered papers. He had grown used to the silence. In some ways, he preferred it. During the day, when he occasionally worked overtime shifts, people barely noticed him. He was just another invisible worker in a blue uniform, someone they walked past without a second glance. As he waited for the elevator, something caught his attention. Music. Soft, beautiful music was drifting down from somewhere above. Alex frowned and looked up at the ceiling. The sound was faint but unmistakable. Classical music. Piano music. He pressed the elevator button for the 34th floor, the executive level. Alex had only been up there a handful of times, usually to clean conference rooms after important meetings. It was a different world up there. Everything was more expensive, more polished. The carpet was thicker, the furniture was real wood, and the windows offered stunning views of the city skyline. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and the music became clearer. Someone was playing Chopin. Alex recognized the piece immediately, though he tried to push the memory away. It had been so long since he had heard classical music played with such skill. He stepped out of the elevator, leaving his cart behind. His footsteps were muffled by the thick carpet as he followed the sound down a long hallway lined with oil paintings and awards. The music was coming from the end of the hall, from what he knew was the CEO's private office and lounge area. Alex had cleaned that office before, but only when Mr. Sterling was traveling. It was impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive desk made of dark wood, and a sitting area with leather chairs that probably cost more than Alex made in 6 months. But he had never noticed a piano in there. As he got closer, the music stopped. Alex paused, wondering if he should turn back. He wasn't supposed to be wandering around the executive floor unless he was specifically assigned to clean there. But curiosity got the better of him. He crept forward until he could peek around the corner into the office. There it was. A grand piano sat in the corner of the room, its black surface gleaming under the soft lighting. It was beautiful, clearly expensive and obviously well-maintained. The lid was open, revealing the strings inside. Sheet music was scattered across the top, and the bench was pushed back slightly, as if someone had just finished playing. But the room was empty. Alex looked around, confused. He had definitely heard someone playing just moments ago. Maybe they had left through another exit? The executive floor had multiple corridors and offices. Whoever it was might have gone to use the restroom or grab something from another room. He should leave. He knew that. Alex started to turn around, but something stopped him. The piano seemed to be calling to him. It had been so long since he had seen one up close, let alone touched the keys of such a magnificent instrument. Before he realized what he was doing, Alex found himself walking into the office. His heart pounded as he approached the piano. This was definitely not allowed. If security caught him in here, he would be fired on the spot. No questions asked, but he couldn't help himself. The piano was a thing of beauty. Alex recognized it as a Steinway, probably worth more than most people's houses. He had dreamed of playing an instrument like this since he was a child. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and touched one of the keys. The note rang out pure and clear, filling the quiet office with its sound. A wave of emotion washed over him. It had been 8 years since he had played piano. 8 long years since everything changed. Alex sat down on the bench, his cleaning uniform feeling out of place in the elegant surroundings. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. He remembered the last time he had sat at a piano. It was in the practice room at the music conservatory, just before he had to drop out. The memory was still painful. He had been so close to achieving his dream. Full scholarship to study music. Teachers who believed in his talent, a future filled with concerts and performances. But life had other plans. His mother's illness came suddenly, and the medical bills piled up faster than he could count. Someone had to work to pay for her treatment, and his younger sister was still in high school. So Alex made the choice that still haunted him. He left school, got a job, and put his dreams on hold. Temporarily, he had told himself. Just until his mother got better and they could get back on their feet financially. That was 8 years ago. His mother had recovered, thankfully, but the debt remained. His sister had finished school and was now in college herself, which meant more expenses. Alex's temporary sacrifice had become permanent, and his piano skills had grown rusty from lack of practice. But muscle memory was a powerful thing. As he sat at the beautiful Steinway, his fingers seemed to remember where they belonged. Almost without thinking, he began to play a simple melody. Just a few notes at first, testing the feel of the keys. The sound was incredible. This piano was perfectly tuned, perfectly maintained. Each note was crisp and clear, with just the right amount of resonance. Alex found himself playing more confidently, letting his fingers explore melodies he had learned years ago. He was so lost in the music that he didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway. He didn't notice the voices getting closer. He was completely absorbed in the joy of playing again, of feeling his hands move across the keys with the skill that had never fully left him. The music filled the office, spilling out into the hallway beyond. For a few precious minutes, Alex forgot about his uniform, his job, his responsibilities. He forgot about the years of working nights and watching other people live the dreams he had given up. In that moment, he was just a musician again, connected to something beautiful and meaningful, but reality was about to crash back down on him in the worst possible way. The lights suddenly blazed on, flooding the office with harsh brightness. Alex's hands froze on the piano keys, the last note hanging in the air like an accusation. His heart stopped as he heard multiple voices behind him. Well, well, well. What do we have here? Alex slowly turned around, his face draining of color. Standing in the doorway were 4 men in expensive suits. He recognized the tall man in the center immediately. Robert Sterling, the CEO and owner of the building. The man whose office Alex was sitting in. The man whose piano he was playing without permission. Sterling's cold blue eyes swept over Alex with obvious disgust. At 55, Sterling was known throughout the business world for his ruthless tactics and massive wealth. He had built his empire from a small family business into a multinational corporation worth billions. He was also known for his sharp tongue and complete lack of patience for people he considered beneath him. I asked you a question, Sterling said, his voice cutting through the silence. What are you doing in my office? Alex jumped to his feet, nearly knocking over the piano bench. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The 3 other men with Sterling were clearly business associates, probably board members or investors. They were all staring at Alex with a mixture of amusement and shock. I was just, Alex stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. You were just what? Sterling demanded, stepping into the office. His expensive leather shoes clicked against the hardwood floor as he approached. Breaking into my private office, touching my property, playing my piano like you own the place? Alex's hand shook as he backed away from the piano. Sir, I'm sorry. I heard music and I thought someone was in here. I just wanted to check and make sure everything was okay. I didn't mean any harm. Sterling's eyes narrowed. You heard music? From in here? He looked around the empty office, then back at Alex. And you thought the best way to check on things was to sit down and play my piano yourself? One of the other men chuckled. Robert, I think your janitor is trying to tell us he's a musician. A musician? Sterling's voice dripped with sarcasm. This is rich. The help thinks he's an artist. He looked Alex up and down, taking in the blue cleaning uniform and the name tag that read, Alex, Maintenance Staff. Alex felt his face burning with embarrassment. He had never felt smaller in his life. These men were looking at him like he was something they had found on the bottom of their shoes. How long have you worked here? Sterling asked, crossing his arms over his chest. 3 years, sir, Alex managed to say. 3 years of cleaning toilets and emptying trash cans. And you think that qualifies you to play a $2 million piano? Sterling shook his head in disbelief. Do you have any idea what this instrument is worth? It's a 1925 Steinway Model D. There are only a few like it in the world. Alex did know what it was worth. He also knew it was probably the most beautiful piano he would ever have the chance to touch. But he couldn't say that. Not now. I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling, Alex said quietly. I'll go back to work now. It won't happen again. "Oh no, you don't get to just walk away from this," Sterling said, blocking Alex's path to the door. "You wanted to play piano so badly that you broke into my office to do it." "Well, let's see what you've got." Alex looked confused. "Sir?" Sterling smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. "I'm a betting man, Alex. I've built my fortune on calculated risks and reading people. And right now I'm looking at a janitor who thinks he can play classical music." The other men exchanged glances. One of them, a shorter man with gray hair, looked uncomfortable. "Robert, maybe we should just let him go. It's late and we all need to get home." "Nonsense, David," Sterling waved him off. "This is entertainment. Besides, I think our friend Alex here needs to learn a lesson about knowing his place." Alex felt sick to his stomach. He could see where this was going, and it wasn't anywhere good. Sterling walked over to the piano and ran his hand along its polished surface. "Here's what we're going to do, Alex. You're going to play something for us. Something impressive. Something that proves you deserve to be touching this instrument." "Mr. Sterling, please." Alex started, but Sterling held up his hand. "I'm not finished," Sterling said coldly. "If you can play something truly impressive, and I mean concert-level impressive, I'll not only forget about this little break-in, I'll give you a promotion. How does assistant manager of operations sound? Nice office, decent salary, respect from your coworkers." Alex's heart skipped a beat. That kind of position would change his life completely. He could pay off his debts, help his sister finish college, maybe even think about his own future again. But Sterling wasn't done talking. "However," he continued, his smile growing wider, "when you fail, and you will fail, you're fired. Not just from this job, but I'll make sure you never work in any building I own or have influence over. And trust me, that's a lot of buildings in this city." The office fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Alex felt trapped like an animal in a cage. He looked at the four men staring at him, waiting for his response. Three of them seemed to be enjoying the show, but the gray-haired man named David looked genuinely uncomfortable with what was happening. "What's it going to be, Alex?" Sterling asked, checking his expensive watch. "Are you going to show us you're more than just a janitor with delusions of grandeur? Or are you going to admit you're exactly what you appear to be? Someone who cleans up other people's messes?" Alex looked at the piano, then back at Sterling. His whole body was shaking now. He thought about his mother's medical bills, still not fully paid off. He thought about his sister, working 2 part-time jobs while trying to study. He thought about his own dreams, buried so deep he sometimes forgot they existed. But he also thought about the 8 years since he had last performed for anyone. The countless hours of practice he had missed. The rust that had surely built up in his fingers and his mind. "Well," Sterling pressed, "we don't have all night. Either sit down and play or get out of my building and don't come back." Alex took a deep breath. He had come this far. There was no backing down now. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll play." Sterling's grin widened. "Excellent. This should be fun." Alex walked slowly back to the piano, each step feeling like it took forever. His legs felt weak and his hands were trembling so badly he wondered if he would even be able to hit the right keys. Behind him, he could hear Sterling and his associates settling into the leather chairs, getting comfortable for what they clearly expected to be a brief and embarrassing show. "Take your time," Sterling called out mockingly. "We're in no rush to watch this disaster unfold." The other men laughed, except for David, who remained quiet. Alex could feel their eyes on his back as he approached the piano bench. The beautiful Steinway that had called to him just minutes earlier now felt like an instrument of torture. He sat down slowly, trying to steady his breathing. His uniform felt rough and cheap against his skin, a constant reminder of the gap between where he was and where these men expected him to stay. The piano bench was positioned perfectly, adjusted to the right height for someone who knew what they were doing. Sterling probably had it set for whoever had been playing earlier. Alex placed his hands on his knees and closed his eyes for a moment. He tried to block out the voices behind him, the weight of their expectations, the fear of losing his job. Instead, he thought about why he had first fallen in love with music. He was 7 years old, sitting in his grandmother's living room. She had an old upright piano that was missing several keys and was badly out of tune, but to Alex it was magical. His grandmother had taught him his first songs on that piano, simple melodies that made her smile and clap her hands. "Music isn't about being perfect," she had told him once. "It's about sharing something beautiful with the world, even if you're the only one listening." Alex opened his eyes and looked down at the keys. His grandmother had been gone for 15 years now, but he could still hear her voice. He placed his fingers on the keys, feeling the smooth ivory beneath his fingertips. "Well?" Sterling's voice cut through his memories. "Are we going to sit here all night, or are you going to play something?" Alex took a deep breath and pressed down on the keys. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major flowed out into the room. It was a piece he had learned when he was 16, one of the first advanced pieces his teacher had given him, but his fingers were stiff. The notes came out hesitant and uncertain. Alex could hear Sterling snickering behind him. "Is this supposed to be impressive?" Sterling asked. "My 12-year-old nephew could play better than this." Alex's face burned with embarrassment. He was proving Sterling right. He really was just a janitor who had forgotten how to play piano. 8 years away from music was too long. He should stop now, apologize, and hope Sterling would at least let him keep his job. But something inside him refused to give up. Maybe it was his grandmother's voice in his head, or maybe it was pure stubbornness, but Alex kept playing. Slowly, his fingers began to remember. The stiffness started to fade, and the notes began to flow more smoothly. The Chopin piece was coming back to him, note by note, phrase by phrase. It was like riding a bicycle after years of walking, clumsy at first, but the muscle memory was still there, waiting to be awakened. As he played, Alex started to relax. The beautiful tone of the Steinway helped too. Even his rusty playing sounded better on this incredible instrument than it ever had on the old practice pianos at school. The notes rang out clear and pure, filling the office with gentle melody. Behind him, the talking stopped. Alex was too focused to notice, but Sterling and his associates had gone quiet. The mocking comments had dried up as the music improved. By the time Alex reached the middle section of the Chopin piece, his fingers were moving with something close to their old confidence. The melody sang out from the piano, each phrase flowing naturally into the next. This was the part of the piece he had always loved most, the way Chopin wrote melody that seemed to speak directly to the heart. As he played, Alex forgot where he was. He forgot about the men watching him, forgot about his uniform, forgot about the impossible choice Sterling had forced on him. There was only the music and the feeling of being connected to something larger than himself. When the Chopin piece ended, Alex paused for a moment, his hands still resting on the keys. The office was completely silent. He turned around to look at his audience, expecting to see the same mocking expressions as before, but their faces had changed. Sterling was no longer smirking. His arms were crossed, but his expression was more thoughtful now. The other 3 men were leaning forward in their chairs, paying attention in a way they hadn't been before. "That was," David started to say, then stopped himself. "That was better," Sterling admitted grudgingly, "but anyone can memorize one piece. Real musicians can do more than repeat something they learned years ago." Alex felt a spark of his old competitive spirit. In school, he had never backed down from a musical challenge. His teachers used to say he had the heart of a performer, someone who got better under pressure, not worse. "What would you like to hear?" Alex asked, surprising himself with the steadiness of his own voice. Sterling raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me to choose?" "You said anyone can memorize one piece," Alex replied. "What would prove that I'm more than that?" For the first time since walking into the office, Sterling looked genuinely curious rather than just cruel. He stood up and walked over to the piano, studying Alex with new interest. "You know what?" Sterling said slowly. "I was actually the one playing when you heard the music earlier. I've been taking lessons for 10 years, ever since I bought this piano. I was working on a Bach piece. Let's see you play that." He reached over and shuffled through the sheet music on top of the piano, pulling out a complex-looking score. Alex recognized it immediately. Bach's Italian Concerto, one of the most challenging pieces in the classical repertoire. It required incredible technical skill and deep musical understanding. Sterling placed the sheet music on the piano's music stand with a satisfied smile. "This should end things quickly," he said. "Bach's Italian Concerto. First movement. Think you can handle it?" Alex stared at the sheet music. It had been years since he had played Bach, and this particular piece was one of the most difficult. But as he looked at the notes on the page, something clicked in his mind. The patterns were familiar, the structure made sense, Bach had always been his favorite composer because of the mathematical precision combined with emotional depth. "I can play it," Alex said quietly. "Without the sheet music," Sterling added with a grin. "If you're really a musician, you won't need to read along like a beginner." Alex nodded and gently pushed the sheet music aside. He placed his hands on the keys and began the opening measures of Bach's Italian Concerto. This time, there was no hesitation. The first notes of Bach's Italian Concerto filled the office like lightning splitting the sky. Alex's fingers moved across the keys with a precision that seemed impossible for someone who had been hesitant just minutes before. The complex melody unfolded perfectly, each note crisp and clear, each phrase building on the last with mathematical beauty. Sterling's mouth fell open. This wasn't the same person who had stumbled through the opening of the Chopin piece. This was something entirely different. The Bach piece was notoriously difficult, requiring years of study and practice to master. Yet Alex was playing it from memory as if he had performed it just yesterday. The music filled every corner of the room, bouncing off the walls and windows, creating a richness of sound that made the expensive office feel like a concert hall. Alex's hands moved independently, the left hand providing a steady, driving rhythm while the right hand danced through the intricate melody lines that Bach had woven together 3 centuries ago. "This is impossible," whispered one of Sterling's associates, a thin man named Peter who had been smirking just moments before. "No janitor plays like this." But David, the gray-haired man who had looked uncomfortable with Sterling's cruel game from the beginning, was leaning forward in his chair with obvious amazement. "Robert," he said quietly, "do you realize what we're hearing?" Sterling couldn't answer. He was watching Alex's hands move across the keyboard with a speed and accuracy that defied belief. The technical demands of the Bach piece were enormous. Rapid scales, complex chord progressions, intricate counterpoint where multiple melodies intertwined. Alex was handling all of it with an ease that spoke of serious musical training. But it wasn't just the technical skill that was stunning. Alex was making the music come alive. Each phrase had meaning, each section told part of a larger story. This wasn't just someone who had memorized a difficult piece. This was someone who understood Bach's genius and was communicating it through his fingertips. As the first movement reached its climax, Alex's playing became even more passionate. His whole body moved with the music, swaying slightly as his hands flew across the keys. The cleaning uniform he wore seemed to disappear. In this moment, he wasn't a janitor at all. He was purely a musician, lost in the joy of creating something beautiful. When the movement ended, the silence that followed was deafening. The 4 men sat frozen, staring at Alex as if they had just witnessed something supernatural. Alex himself seemed surprised by what had just happened. He looked down at his hands as if he couldn't quite believe they belonged to him. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Sterling asked, his voice barely above a whisper. All the mockery was gone now, replaced by genuine awe. Alex turned around on the piano bench. For the first time since entering the office, he didn't look afraid or embarrassed. Playing the Bach had reminded him of who he really was underneath the uniform and the years of struggle. "I had a full scholarship to the Manhattan Music Conservatory," Alex said simply. "I was studying classical performance. Piano was my major." "Was?" David asked gently. Alex nodded. "I had to leave in my 3rd year. My mother got cancer and someone needed to work to pay for her treatment. The medical bills were enormous. My little sister was still in high school, so it had to be me." The room fell silent again. Sterling, who had built his fortune through ruthless business practices, looked genuinely uncomfortable for the first time anyone could remember. "But you kept playing, obviously," Peter said. "You don't maintain that level of skill without constant practice." Alex shook his head. "I haven't touched a piano in over a year. Before tonight, it had been 8 years since I played anything seriously. I used to practice sometimes at the community center, but they sold their piano last year to pay for roof repairs." 8 years? Sterling repeated, incredulous. "You haven't played piano regularly in 8 years, and you just performed one of the most difficult pieces in classical music like you play it every day?" "Muscle memory is strange," Alex said with a small smile. "And Bach. Bach makes sense to me. His music is like mathematics. Once you understand the patterns, they stay with you." Sterling stood up and walked over to the piano. He was looking at Alex with an expression no one had ever seen on his face before, something that might have been respect. "Play something else," Sterling said. but this time it wasn't a challenge or a command. It was a request. Alex turned back to the piano. "What would you like to hear?" "Whatever you want to play," Sterling replied. "Something you love." Alex thought for a moment, then smiled. He began to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most beloved pieces in the classical repertoire. But he was playing both parts, the piano solo and the orchestral accompaniment, switching between them seamlessly, humming the orchestral melodies when his hands were busy with the piano part. The music was breathtaking. Rachmaninoff had poured all of his passion and emotion into this concerto, and Alex was bringing every bit of that feeling to life. The melody soared and dipped, building to emotional peaks that left the listeners feeling like they had been on an emotional journey. But Alex wasn't finished. As the Rachmaninoff piece wound down, he began to improvise, taking the classical melodies and transforming them into something entirely new. Jazz influences crept in, then blues, then contemporary harmonies that shouldn't have worked with the classical foundation but somehow did. His fingers found patterns that no composer had ever written down, creating music that existed only in this moment in this room. It was as if years of suppressed creativity were pouring out all at once. 8 years of musical ideas that had been locked away finally finding their voice. The improvisation built to a crescendo that incorporated elements from all the pieces he had played, weaving Bach's mathematical precision together with Chopin's emotional depth and Rachmaninoff's passionate romanticism, all filtered through Alex's own unique musical voice. When the music finally ended, Alex sat quietly for a moment, his hands resting on the keys. The silence stretched on, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that follows something truly special, when people need a moment to process what they've just experienced. Finally, David spoke up. "In 40 years of attending classical concerts, I have never heard anything like that," he said softly. "That improvisation, where did that come from?" Alex turned around again and there were tears in his eyes. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I guess it's been building up inside me all these years. I didn't realize how much I missed it until tonight." Sterling was still standing by the piano, staring at Alex as if seeing him for the first time. The cruel, arrogant man who had entered the office an hour ago was gone. In his place was someone who had just witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about talent, about class, about the value of human beings. "Alex," Sterling said quietly, "we need to talk." Sterling walked over to his desk and sat down heavily in his leather chair. The other 3 men remained in their seats, still processing what they had just witnessed. Alex stayed at the piano bench, uncertain about what would happen next. The office felt different now, charged with an energy that hadn't been there before. "I owe you an apology," Sterling said, breaking the silence. His voice was quiet, almost humble. "When I walked in here tonight, I saw a janitor in my office touching my piano. I thought I knew exactly who you were and what you were worth." Alex nodded but didn't speak. He could see that Sterling was struggling with something. "I built my company by being tough, by never showing weakness, by always staying on top," Sterling continued. "But tonight you've shown me something I forgot along the way. Talent doesn't come with a title or a fancy suit. Worth isn't measured by a paycheck." David leaned forward in his chair. "Robert, what are you thinking?" Sterling looked at Alex with an expression that was completely different from the cruel smirk he had worn earlier. "I made you a deal, Alex. If you could play something truly impressive, I would give you a promotion." "Well, you didn't just play something impressive. You played like someone who belongs on stage at Carnegie Hall." "So you're offering him the assistant manager position?" Peter asked. Sterling shook his head. "No, that's not enough. Not even close to enough." He stood up and walked back over to the piano. "Alex, tell me something. If money wasn't an issue, if you didn't have to worry about bills or supporting your family, what would you want to do with your life?" Alex looked down at his hands, still resting on the piano keys. "I'd want to finish my degree. I'd want to perform. I'd want to teach music to kids who love it the way I do but can't afford lessons. What if I told you that you could do all of those things?" Sterling asked. Alex looked up, confused. "I don't understand." Sterling smiled, and for the first time all night it was a genuine smile. "My company has a charitable foundation. We fund arts programs, education initiatives, community projects. Right now it's run by accountants and lawyers who understand money but don't understand art or music or what these programs actually mean to people." "What are you saying?" Alex asked. I'm saying I want to offer you a position as Director of Arts and Community Programs for the Sterling Foundation. You would oversee a budget of $5 million a year. You would decide which music programs get funded, which schools get instruments, which talented kids get scholarships. Alex's mouth fell open. That's impossible. I'm not qualified for something like that. You're more qualified than anyone I know, Sterling replied. You understand what it means to have talent but not opportunity. You know what it's like to have dreams and lose them because of circumstances beyond your control. Who better to decide how to help other people in similar situations? David was nodding enthusiastically. It's brilliant, Robert. Someone who's been through the struggle would know exactly how to help others overcome it. Sterling continued, his excitement growing. The position comes with a full benefits package, of course. Health insurance for you and your family, retirement planning, and a salary of $120,000 a year. Alex felt dizzy. It was more money than he had ever imagined making. It was enough to pay off all his debts, help his sister finish college, and maybe even think about going back to school himself. But there's more, Sterling said. The company has partnerships with several universities. If you wanted to finish your music degree, we could arrange for you to take classes part-time while you work. We'd pay for everything, tuition, books, fees. Why? Alex asked, his voice barely audible. Why would you do all this? Sterling was quiet for a long moment. Because tonight you reminded me of something I lost along the way. When I started my business, it wasn't just about making money. I wanted to build something that mattered, something that made the world better. Somewhere along the line, I forgot that. I started measuring success only in dollars and deals. He gestured toward the piano. This piano has been sitting in my office for 10 years. I bought it because I thought it made me look sophisticated. I took lessons because I thought classical music was something successful people should know. But I never felt what you feel when you play. I never had that connection to something bigger than myself. Alex stood up from the piano bench, still struggling to process everything Sterling was offering. What about tonight? What about the way you treated me when you first came in? Sterling's face flushed with shame. I was wrong. Completely, totally wrong. I judged you based on your uniform instead of your character. I treated you like you were less than human because of your job. That's not the kind of person I want to be, and it's not the kind of company I want to run. Does this mean we're going to start treating all our employees differently? David asked. It means we're going to start remembering that every person who works for us has a story, has talents, has dreams, Sterling replied. It means we're going to create opportunities for people to grow, not just keep them in boxes we think they belong in. Alex felt tears starting to form in his eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Sterling said simply. Take the job. Help us do something meaningful with our success. And keep playing. The world needs to hear your music. Alex looked around the room at the four men who had completely changed their opinion of him in the span of an hour. Then he looked at the beautiful piano that had started this whole incredible night. Yes, he said quietly. Yes, I'll take the job. Sterling smiled and extended his hand. When Alex shook it, Sterling held on for an extra moment. Thank you, he said, for reminding me what really matters. 6 months later, Alex sat in his new office on the 28th floor of Sterling Tower. Through his window, he could see the community center where he had arranged for the Sterling Foundation to donate a brand new piano. 3 times a week, he went there to teach free music lessons to kids whose families couldn't afford private instruction. His sister had graduated from college debt-free, thanks to the scholarship program Alex had created. His mother's medical bills were finally paid off. And twice a week, Alex attended evening classes at the conservatory, working toward the degree he thought he'd never finish. But the best part of his new life was the letter he'd received just that morning from a 10-year-old girl named Sophie, whose school had received instruments through one of his programs. She wrote, "Thank you for helping me learn piano. When I play, I feel like I can do anything." Alex smiled and looked over at the corner of his office where Sterling had installed another beautiful piano. Tonight after work he would play again. And tomorrow he would help another young musician discover the same joy that had changed his life forever.